At last, it's happened. Kindle Vella, Amazon's attempt at monetizing episodic web novels, has imploded, leaving thousands of stories in a desolate graveyard that shall never be visited again. Not Bonesong, though. I have moved Bonesong, Diary of a Sentient Sword, to, wait for it, it's Patreon. Of course, it's Patreon. I did a ton of research into various methods. I looked into Ko-fi, Substack, and a whole slew of other different methods. And then my friend told me about Royal Roads. Royal Roads is a website for episodic web novels that, unlike Kindle Vella, actually has massive traffic to it. Many of the successful stories on Royal Roads eventually become published on Kindle. Like, there's a lot going for it. It's also free. Like, all the content is free. And I was like, so how do they make money? Turns out the same way YouTubers make money, apparently. Patreon. Basically, what authors on Royal Roads seem to do is release chapters on Royal Roads for free, but release more chapters on Patreon. 3 chapters ahead, 10 chapters ahead, 15 chapters ahead, you get the idea. So basically, people only have to pay if they are impatient. And readers are impatient. I like this model. It lets those among you enjoy Bonesong even if you can't support me while still having a conversion rate that is probably higher than Kindle Vella. It can also reach other countries besides the United States. So all of you in England and Mexico and India who asked to read Bonesong, now you won't be barred from it because of ridiculous Kindle Vella restrictions. Fine, I'm sold. I'll post it on Kindle Vella. How do I do that? I went down a long rabbit hole of kind people on the internet explaining how the algorithm of Royal Roads works and how one goes about getting popular on it. And the most important thing is, of course, frequency. You have to post a lot, like an ungodly amount. Frequency. And the secret to that, of course, is the magic of having backlogs. Do I have a backlog? Yeah, I do have a backlog. Is it big enough to do what I would need to do on Royal Roads? So I need to make it longer. Using a very aggressive writing schedule that I've already been following for a few weeks, I have calculated that I can start posting to Royal Roads in May. What if you want to read Bonesong earlier, you ask? That's where Patreon comes in. I chose Patreon because that is what the audience on Royal Roads is accustomed to, and I wanted to make the whole process as seamless and convenient and comfortable as possible. If you mosey over to the collection tab on Patreon, there will be the first 10 chapters. All still completely free, just like they were in Kindle Vella. Actually, I combined some chapters for Royal Roads algorithmic reasons. So it's actually the original first 13 chapters. Those last 3 chapters didn't used to be free. The next 10 chapters are in another collection for $4.99 or free for Patreons. Why $4.99? Because I'm not a juggernaut, and the 10 cents a chapter model was not sustainable once you're paying the processing fees and the Patreon fees. But on the flip side, now that money is actually supporting me instead of Kindle taking most of it. I also included the much beloved polls I did on Kindle Vella. They were silly and ridiculous, and everyone loved them, and so I managed to bake them into Patreon itself and add more, so you can enjoy voting on those. I also made a single Patreon tier. I'll make others once I start posting on Royal Roads, but in the meantime, it exists just for especially impatient readers. I'm going to post on Patreon a chapter of Bonesong every Friday until I start posting on Royal Roads, in which case the frequency of my posts will skyrocket. It will be way more than every Friday, but that'll be when I start posting on Royal Roads. And once a chapter gets on Royal Roads, it will be free. Full disclosure, you can wait for these chapters to be free in a couple of months. Buying Bonesong now is an impatience tax. And I say, embrace impatience. In fact, impatient people are my favorite people. And I have no monetary incentive to say that whatsoever. So be impatient. Buy Bonesong now. But what is Bonesong, you ask? I don't know why you clicked on this video if you didn't already know what Bonesong was, but I'm glad that you did. It is an ongoing story from the perspective of a sentient sword, like Stormbringer, Frostmourne, Night Shroud, that sort of thing. And the sword is trying to save the city of its blacksmiths, but has to handle different wielders and different motivations of those wielders. Very fun story, a very, very fast paced. I use what I like to call the potato chip method of storytelling, where each chapter is you can't just read one chapter. I think I succeeded in that, but you can be the judge of that. Click the link below to read. Remember, the first 10 chapters are completely free. It doesn't take too much of your time. They are short, snappy, fast-paced. These are lunch break stories. Enjoy them. Also, to be clear, yes, I have a Patreon. This is technically a Patreon video. But I didn't make it for this channel. If you want to support me because you like this channel, that's fine. But I'm just being honest up front. This isn't a Patreon for the channel. I literally just made this Patreon so that I could save Bonesong from being a dead skeleton on a dead site. There'll be a new Bonesong chapter on Friday. Check it out if you want to. Enjoy reading, guys. Bye-bye.